Thank you, Alora. She is an amazing person to work with to put together a service. We had fun negotiations about music, and it just came together beautifully.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Yeah, this talk, one of the intentions is to cover the whole realm of emotions, joyful, sad. I'm probably going to cry multiple times up here. Yeah, besides thanking musicians, I want to thank, Holly and Dawn, just the perfect reading and meditation today. And I want to thank Dallas for last Sunday talking about vulnerability and Easter and all that, and Michael Dowd a few weeks ago talking about however it hit you, the sort of the rise and fall of civilizations and all that, and just being comfortable with the fall part of that, regardless of how you feel about civilizations. As individuals, what he said really struck me as, yes, each of us is going to die. Each of us is on a path toward dying right now, ever since the day we were born. Yeah, there's usually a nice uptrend at first, and then at some point it levels off maybe, and maybe some dips and ups and downs, and then you die. That's the way it goes. So, yeah, we are eternal, spiritual beings. At least that's my belief. We are eternal. Our bodies are not. Therein lies the rub. How do we get comfortable with that? We get pretty identified with our bodies. At least I have. I am very grateful what my body has allowed me to do. Have fun and run and dance and everything. And at some point, that's it has already started diminishing ever since I first noticed it 2014, my hip replacement. It's like, what's this about? Yeah. Luckily, I have pretty much recovered from all that, but I know that who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. That's the way these things go. Yeah, many of us, all of us, have been through deaths recently or in the past year. Dave DeLauder a few weeks ago, my cat a few months ago. Probably that was the most impactful loss of my life so far. My cat, and not my parents, not good friends. I was very close to my cat. One never knows how things like that are going to hit us. So, what is death the end of? Death is the easy part, I figure. I'm a spiritual being. Death is like, okay, so whoopee. Body's dead. I'm still here. That's what my plan is anyway, my expectation. But leading up to that, I'll just read a little quote here out of this book. Barbara Carnes has written a lot of little books about dying and understanding death, being with people who are dying. This is from her book called A Time to Live, Living with a Life-Threatening Illness. Being afraid to die has nothing to do with a belief in God or religious affiliation. In fact, most of us are not afraid of being dead. We're afraid of dying. It's from now until we are dead that is the scary part. Because of this fear of dying, we may think of suicide or assisted suicide if you're in pain a lot, et cetera, et cetera. Most people with a life-threatening illness think about suicide at some point. This is normal, but few people do it. For most of us, something instinctual surfaces that says, this is a life experience. Face the fear and grow. The excitement. You can go that way or not. And yeah, I'll throw in this now on the nicer side of this equation. It isn't until we begin to lose something that we find its true worth. At the end of each day, before we go to sleep, we need to ask ourselves, what did I do today that I traded a day of my life for? Where was the value of this day? Did I watch a sunset? Hold someone's hand? Did I hear the birds sing? Did I give someone a smile? Has my day been so wrapped up in myself that I forgot to consider others? Did I laugh today? So, yeah, I want to make sure we have some laughs today. And I really like the attitude of the I'll Fly Away song, and I'm looking forward to the last song today. Anyway, yeah, so my awareness of these booklets, she has a bunch of them dealing with pain, my friend I care dealing with grief of other people, etc. Anyway, the motivation for this talk came from doing a class on becoming an end-of-life doula, sort of a death doula, sort of the opposite end of a birth doula or birth midwife. It's like helping people understand and deal with all the stuff going on as one is dying and after death. Mary Lynn Rush is a local end-of-life doula and trainer, and she puts on a wonderful training, and Annie's doing it right now. And Darlene, from what I hear. So we're going to have some educated people. You too? All right. Anyway, that was sort of the idea, gave me the idea of doing a talk, but then the emotional nudge was running into something in that training that was like, oh, vulnerability. Even I have some vulnerability. When they talked about solo aging, which I'll get to a little bit more later. Okay. This talk could easily last an hour, so I'm going to try to zip through as much as I can. And what's death the end of? This is my thoughts on this. Besides, obviously, the loss of a physical body, a death of a body, we come here, I figure, incarnate with some purpose in mind. And I've heard people say, oh, the purpose of life is blah, blah. It's to learn, it's to this, it's to that, it's to have fun. I think there's not one primary purpose for everybody. I think we each have our own purpose for coming here, and there's certainly overlaps and all that, but it could be the search for freedom from suffering. I'm not sure why you would come here, incarnate to get away from suffering, but it seems like some people do that. They come here and then search for their whole life for freedom from suffering. So death, on the positive side, could be the achievement of that final freedom. Or come here to express creativity. This is a wonderful sandbox, all sorts of stuff to play with, colleagues to co-create with. It's an amazing amusement park and chance for creating things, whether it's artwork or creating kids and companies and whatever. In that case, death could be a chance to sort of look back on your life and think of it as a piece of a quilt, like squares on my shirt. You create this while you're young, you create this, and then you create this. Death is like, oh, what have I done? What is this whole big quilt that I have created my whole life? If we put all the pieces together, what does it look like? And that's part of life review, which is making meaning out of your life. See, another purpose for coming here, being entertained. I've heard people say, well, the primary thing is just to have fun. Why else would you be a human? Entertained, amused, loving the drama. I mean, people obviously love drama, or else TVs and movies, we wouldn't have money. Or enjoyment, amusement. So death could be the sort of the culmination of the drama, the series of acts and TV, whatever that we've been watching and participating in our whole life. It could be the punchline of this joke, this lifetime joke. It's like, whoa, that's the punchline, that's amazing. I can think of one or two people who would look at that way, maybe. Or maybe research and discovery. This is like a chance to experiment and understand things better. Carl Sagan, the astronomer, said, this two-pronged investigation into the nature of the world and the nature of ourselves is, to a very major degree, I believe, what the human enterprise is about. So, not surprising, being a scientist and all that, he's thinking this is all about research. So, in that case, maybe death is like the final uncovering, the final fitting the pieces together of understanding something new and amazing about why we're here. Life relationships, that seems like a very exciting reason to come be a human. All sorts of fascinating relationship possibilities. Friends, lovers, family, colleagues, co-created, relationships. And you get, in some cases, the physical aspect of it, just giving hugs. You can't do that if you don't have a body. So, in that case, death could provide the nudge to clean up loose ends. It's like, look back at relationships, look at current relationships and say, what have I been learning about relationships? What did I come here to want from relationships, and what is left for me to do regarding relationships? And you might look at certain relationships and say, well, I could clean up that misunderstanding, that grudge, or you could say, I'm going to die. We're done with any chance of resolving that grudge. They have to live with it the rest of their life. Let's see, another purpose you might come here for that goes away when you die is being of service. Could come to this planet and say, okay, I'm going to sort of do this bodhisattva kind of thing and just be of service and help humanity and bring peace to earth and all this stuff. And however successful one feels one is doing that in life, at the end of life, it's the end, at least of that chapter of doing that, trying to pursue that purpose. Death, in that case, is a chance to say, okay, time for a break. I succeeded at this, I failed at that. Let's take a breath and reconsider what to do next time, maybe something different. Or maybe lifetime is just, you take lifetime after lifetime of having this purpose and this strong purpose and this, and then this one is like, I'm just going to take a break, a vacation. I just want to sit on a beach the whole life and don't bother me. In which case, death is like, the end of the vacation has arrived. Yeah. So, planning for death. It's going to happen. Why would one bother planning about it? In my view, the idea is not to be any additional burden on other people, on your family, your close friends, whoever might have to deal with your crap after you're gone or as you're dying, because we never know whether we're going to have this perfect, like in Don's meditations, like, okay, what would the ideal death be? That's nice, and we don't all get that. And if you know for sure how you're going to die, then I want to talk to you. My dad died, took a year after getting diagnosed with cancer, downhill slowly, put it full speed, getting his wife and him moved to Texas near my brother, getting the house sold, getting the house cleaned out, et cetera, et cetera. He was like very methodical and amazing. My mother, a year and a half later, after my dad died, I was on vacation with her in Hawaii, and she was alone on the beach one afternoon, and I went and found her dead on the beach alone. Uh, so good luck knowing the future. Planning can be helpful. In the case of my dad, he had taken the time at some point prior to his death to just write this typewritten thing just saying, oh, by the way, I think the happiest years of our lives were in California, so you could bury my ashes there. So I knew he wanted to be cremated, and where he was Catholic, my parents were Catholic, so you can be cremated, but still got to be buried. It's a little silly in my opinion, but what do I know about Catholicism? Yeah, and luckily I knew my mom wanted to be cremated, so it saved a whole lot of hassle being in Hawaii, the idea of, okay, what do I do with a body, getting a body back to wherever, to the mainland, and I knew she wanted to be cremated. It was like, oh, thank goodness, my life is easier. And so the more we can put things like that in place so people know what we want, and it makes us feel less guilty about burdening them with stuff, and it helps them deal with it, because they've got enough to deal with. There's the simple will, what to do with your assets. There's, if you want to put a trust in place, then there's, okay, who is going to be the trustee, and who's the backup person in case that person is already dead or incapacitated or unwilling? Who's going to make decisions for me as I'm dying if I am not able to voice or understand what to ask for in the way of medical care? Have a backup person for that. Who's going to take care of disposing of my body, however that happens, whether it's cremation or normal burial with embalming and a casket and viewing, or is it going to be a green burial in a plain decomposable wooden box, or just in a shroud, just 3 feet down where it can decompose nicely versus 6 feet down where it creates methane as it decomposes. And so the law says by default the person who decides all that is your next of kin, which varies by state, by the way, a little bit. But maybe you don't want to rely on next of kin to do that, so you have to specify in writing. There's forms for all this stuff. I got all sorts of reference material here. There's this thing there's things online, there's books, so 5 wishes, how to, just nudge you into putting down what you want to happen and who you want to deal with it. Advanced directives for similar, make it legal, living will, funeral representative designation, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, the conversation project. Yeah, it's one thing to put this stuff down in writing. It's another thing to have a conversation with the people you're writing down. And that can be, some people don't want to talk about it, and you really need to. So that's one thing I want to get across today, is nudging you to have conversations with people who are open to having conversations, and help you sort out what you want, and maybe get them thinking about what they will want. So planning is a good idea. It's also looking at death as not looking at dying, not death, looking at aging and dying. Like I said, death is the easy part. It's an opportunity to look at things, like I mentioned, figuring out what meaning has your life had. Review your life. Feel good about it as much as possible. Look at any regrets. Say, okay, how can I let go of those? Is there something I can do to get rid of them as a regret? You might want to have somebody help you, like do a video of you telling your family, okay, this is what I want you to know about me. What I want you to know that I thought of you, and how much I thought of you, how much you helped me in my life. There's something called an ethical will and also a spiritual will, similar kind of things. Writing down, not what you want done with your assets or your body, writing down what you care about in life. What pearls of wisdom you gained that you would like to share, whether people want to hear it or not. It's still nice to share it, because we have all learned a lot in our lives. Figuring out what a good death is. And when I was looking at all this stuff, I said, okay, if I, like I said, you never know how it's going to happen. I could die tonight. I'd like to have something in place if that happens, so people know what to do. But there's time options, there's how you go options, there's who else is left in your life when it happens options. So one thing I looked at was donating my body to U of M medical school, okay? That sounds virtuous and all that. They may not accept a body that's being offered to them, depending on what's gone on with the body. And you might die unexpectedly on a beach in Hawaii, in which case you really don't want to have to get the body back, and they probably don't want it after it's brought back. So you have to have backup plans. So it's like, if this, then this, and if that, then this, and have this. I just imagine this huge decision tree. And that's, by the way, one reason. If you want a reason not to bother thinking about any of this, not to plan anything, not to put anything in writing or talk to anybody, just leave it be. Here's your excuse. I have no idea how it'll happen. With all the options that it could be, who knows how it'll be anywhere in my decision tree, what actually happens. So why bother wasting all that time putting together all the plans if I don't know what's going to happen? That's not what I'm nudging you to do, but you could go there. Okay, anthropomorphizing. This is one of my favorite bits here today. I forgot that. Okay. So much I won't get to, but I got to do this one. So sometimes I hear people say, well, the idea of cremation is really scary because it's like, it's like being burned alive. No, your body's dead. Or green burial, it's like the idea, or any sort of, or being buried in a casket. It's like, well, it feels so claustrophobic. And it's like, so the point being that, don't worry about that. It's easy to put our alive person viewpoint on this dead body, this future dead body, and we're not going to be the body, okay? And even if we aren't spiritual beings, even if we are just a body, it's going to be dead, okay? It's not going to feel the cremation. It's not going to feel any of that. And this brought to mind, when I was growing up, there was this song, "The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out." Yeah. Yes. That's as far as I remembered it. And I thought, what are there more lyrics to that? I really encourage you, if just that little bit creeps you out at all, do not go and learn the rest of the lyrics. They are disgusting. Really. All right. Well, you're laughing. Okay, we don't need a humor break at the moment. Solo aging. This is the one that got me thinking. It's like I never heard of the term solo aging before, but as part of the training, I ran into it on an AARP website. And, definition: over age 50 who live alone, are not married or partnered in a long-term relationship, and have no living children. 12% of the 50-plus population in the U.S. are solo agers currently, and that percentage is expected to double in the next 10 years. And 70% of us have no preparation in place for care if we need it. most of those will need long-term care at some point. It's like, okay, maybe some planning is a good idea. But the idea of, and I know I'm in a good place. I may be a solo ager by that definition, but I have family that I'm still in good speaking terms with. I have good friends, and yeah, really caring friends, and you are all part of that. I love you, by the way. In case I die tonight, I want to say I love you. Zoom too. Thank you. Yeah, so that's slow aging. That's one fear, is dying without, or even looking at dying without having any clue who I could put on any of those roles. You know, if there are people who have no family that they're in any communication with, who have no close enough friends that they're willing to put, to even ask to make decisions for them or do anything for them when they're dying, because at least for me that feels like a fairly intimate kind of connection on both sides of the equation. So that's a scary thing to me, to just get that feeling. But there are plenty of other fears that one might have. Barbara Carnes mentioned it a little bit, but there's, fear of being a burden in so many ways. There's fear of not having my paperwork in order, not having all the updates done that I would like to do. I have some in place, but it needs updating. Fear of letting go of stuff. I mean, we all have stuff, and I just recently let go of my 1986 Toyota MR2 little two-seater car, because it was like, I love it, but I don't want to have somebody else deal with it. So I sold it to somebody who really appreciated it, got a good price for it, and now I have one less thing in my garage. I let go of my cat. That was sad, but it was time. 19 and a half years old. Speaking of preparation, I dug his grave a year and a quarter before, because I thought he was going to die, and I didn't want to have to try to dig through frozen ground, so I dug. It was the first cat I ever buried on my property. It was interesting. Let's see, fears. You can involve a bank trust department in handling your financial stuff. I've heard stories where they might take more money than you expected them to take in the process. You can be more, as you age, you get more subject to possibilities for fraud and people taking advantage of you. Loss of mobility and independence. That's one of my biggies too. Like I said, the hip replacement, it's like I couldn't dance at Blissfest. That was horrible. Just walking across the street was really scary sometimes. And I'm a very independent sort of guy, and so that kind of stuff is scary. And having to ask for help with anything like that, that's at least as scary. Yeah. So, and then fear of suffering, physical suffering, dementia. It's like, I have my housemate Lori, who had a cancer diagnosis back in 2015. She took it on like a trooper, went through treatment. At the end, as she was getting through the treatment, they said, a lot of our women like Ativan. It's a benzodiazepine anti-anxiety drug. They failed to mention to her that she should come back for regular checkups and maybe not look at it as any sort of long-term thing. 6 months later, when she tried to get off of it, it's like her body would not let her. She went through hell. She reached the point where it's like, hey, I hope the cancer comes back. At least that'll get rid of this horrible thing. And the cancer came back, and it was her nudge. It's like, okay, don't want to go through cancer death for myself or the family. So she was just amazing, putting together in place all the hoops she had to jump through to get herself to Switzerland, to have physician-assisted dying with dignity, with her daughter's picture on her heart, holding good friends' hands, having already said goodbye to her family back in the U.S. So yeah, there's things that are scary and we don't want to do. I mentioned my cat. It would be scary to me, the idea of leaving behind a pet. It's like, okay, there's another thing to put in writing and have conversations about what happens to your pets if you die tomorrow. We care about our pets. All right, those are some downers. All right, quick humor break. I sent out to the list a few days ago a link to a song sung by Julie Butel, written by somebody else. The Old Dogs wrote it, called Still Gonna Die. And basically it's like, you can do this, you can do that, you're still gonna die. So I had some fun adding some lyrics of my own. You can resolve all your traumas, do yoga every day, you can inject stem cells, you can replace all your joints and organs, run 5Ks and marathons every week. You're still gonna die. You can make music with friends all the time. You can become enlightened and levitate and bilocate. You're still gonna die. You can be of indispensable service. You can chant Sanskrit with your favorite guru. You can rule the world, admirers all around. You're still gonna die. You can rise from the dead. This was inspired by last week. You can rise from the dead. You still did die. All right, you get the idea. All right. So, triumphs. We've got to balance the fears with the triumphs, right? One of my big triumphs is, like I mentioned, having friends and family that I am in loving communication with. I'm sure there's certainly room for adding more love to the whole thing, and maybe this will be my nudge to do more of that. Triumphs, having paperwork in order, feeling like, got that done. Selling my old car, got that done. Okay. Working gradually, getting my house to the point where it's more sellable if and when I need to move it to a more easily livable location, house, condo, whatever, or assisted living, who knows. I offloaded, I had this plot of land in New Mexico that my aunt gave me a few decades ago when she was heading toward dying, and I paid the $14 a year taxes since then, and finally a year or so ago I offloaded that to my niece. And it's like, yes! So, yeah, triumphs. Anyway, that's the basic idea. And I would love to hear in open mic time your fears and triumphs. In conclusion, I mentioned reasons to plan and excuses not to plan. If you wish to get out of thinking about it, that's fine. Fear of the unknown, anticipation, fear of the unknown versus anticipation of a new adventure. It's just a mindset, you know. It is safe. Here's a big takeaway I wish to give to you. It is safe and healthy to talk about death. It is not going to make you die. It is not going to manifest death. Okay? Resisting it might, but talking about it and flowing with it is a good thing. When the time comes, if the time comes for you, hospice is a great thing. Do not resist hospice. Hospice can make the rest of your life so much nicer and actually prolong it because you're not in pain so much. Okay? Yeah. My goodness, I think I'm going to end there. So it's open mic time. Thank you.